Okay, I'm going to kick us off, and then I'm sure people will continue to come in as we go. But if you haven't been here before, welcome to the Bold Start Speaker Series. I'm Ellen Shiza, the founder in residence here at Bold Start. If it's your first time joining us, we do this every week as part of our mission to help technical founders and other founders become the world's best enterprise CEOs. Today, I am joined by Sharone Zitzman of RTFM. If you don't know that acronym, I'm going to let you Google it in case anyone has kids in the room with them. And she's going to talk about all things developer relations and meetups. We originally got to know her through her work as the head of user communities at Sneak, a Bold Start portfolio company. But before that, she has also been a longtime dev marketer at companies including Cloudify and AppsFlyer. So I will turn it over to Sharone. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, I'm really excited to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Let me know if you can see my presentation. Okay, so I'm really excited to be here and talk about hacking marketing for your developers with a specific focus on meetups that I have found delivered tangible value in building a presence in front of technologists. And I'm going to use this interchangeably, technologists and developers interchangeably, because it's not always developers, programmers. Sometimes it's SREs and production engineers. Sometimes it's ops. Sometimes it's security engineers, data scientists. So for me, this holds true for any kind of technology focused audience. And so just so we can frame the discussion, I'm going to talk about a little bit about marketing, like kind of how it's evolved, and it's come a long way. Once upon a time, we lived with this ubiquitous customer lifecycle management, and the funnel mostly looked like this, where you could really create significant impact with some white papers, a webinar to some trade shows, and kind of throw the leads over the fence to sales, and they'd take it from there. But marketing today has, with a fully digitized world, and now even more at a greater scale because of COVID that has forced everyone to have a digital presence to remain relevant. Marketing involves many, many different disciplines, and it even needs to be closely coordinated with other disciplines entirely to support the effort, like product and customer success and HR, and with employer branding. Organizations need to continuously be reinventing themselves when it comes to marketing, with numerous subspecialties from demand gen, growth hacking and SEO, communications, product marketing, developer marketing, community, developer relations, content marketing, and much, much more. Marketing itself has become like this crazy ecosystem with a lot of complex technology powering it as well. And this has taken marketing way farther down the funnel, where marketing needs to be bringing a lot more value through relevant and high intent leads, where MQLs, or today they're even called PQLs because it's become a lot more product specific and experiential, and I'll get to that in a second, are very rarely not converted to sales accepted leads, SALs. And marketing today also, like I said, has to provide a much more experiential, interactive experience, from try it now to freemium. There's even open source models and business models, and that's a debatable term. But, and like I said, it has to be a lot more coordinated with other disciplines. So there's a really tight handoff between product and marketing these days. A lot more of a focus on B2C and B2D as marketing, of ways of marketing adoption, building adoption, B2C being business to consumer client, B2D being business to developer, where we actually have real users, real customers, even before they're paying customers, because of freemium and open source models. And it's opened up a whole new world where we actually have to understand our users much, much better and provide them with a much better experience very early as the first touch. And so I'm guessing you're wondering how this all relates to meetups, and I'll get to that in a second. All right. So hi, I'm Sharone Zitzman, and I've spent my career building open source and developer communities from the ground up. Like Ellen said, at Cloudify, I built the open source developer community there. the DevOps Israel community, the cloud native and open source community in Israel. I finished my career at Cloudify as the VP marketing. So I've had traditional marketing experience through being head of developer relations at AppsFlyer, which is a hyper growth scale up. And I've taken all of this experience and I've decided to become a free agent, to go rogue and help early stage startups build developer first go-to-market strategies and provide developer relations as a service, because this is an area that's exploding today. And today I'm going to talk about something that's like sometimes a little bit less understood in the area of marketing, and that's everything associated with developer experience of products and some of the ways to optimize for this through developer relations and community. I'll also touch on some of the differences between the common terminologies. Some of you folks might actually be familiar with these areas, so I hope to provide you at least with some tangible value, in particular around the area of meetups, which is the primary focus of this talk, so you can have some practical takeaways from this session. Okay, so let's start with the terminology. And so many times we need to scale our developer-focused efforts and we don't know exactly what we need. There are so many terms in this area: developer marketing, developer relations, advocacy, evangelism, community. Do I need a community? So I hope I'm going to help with kind of demystifying that a little bit, and then also explain how you can use certain channels to growth hack your developer-focused marketing. So let's talk about developer marketing. So what is developer marketing? So I guess simply stated, it's just what it sounds like. It's marketing for developers. And what I mean by that is basically the marketing playbook, where your target persona is a technologist, is technology consumers. So branding with visuals and a product story that's developer focused, PR and AR that's focused on developer publications and media, content and SEO that's focused on deep tech content, meaningful, deep technology focused articles, demand gen, again, driving leads from developer focused channels, event strategies, that's developer events, et cetera, you get the idea. But really having a marketing playbook where your target persona is a technologist. Okay, great. So what's developer relations? So for me, developer relations, and I found that there are many, many definitions for this term, but for me, developer relations is kind of the flip side of product marketing. And what I mean by that, if product marketing is for the most part focused and communicates kind of the business benefits of using your product, it's going to communicate the technology benefits of your product, right? So this is, for me, is where developer relations comes in, and it's particularly relevant when your product is not necessarily targeted. The buying persona is not necessarily a technologist, and I'll explain how that fits in, for example, with AppsFlyer or like Netflix and Airbnb. But developer relations makes your product more accessible and consumer for a technology user, and can oftentimes be called technical product marketing as well. Now, at companies where the primary user is a technologist, you know, sometimes there's overlap between developer relations and product marketing. And I'll give a shout out here to a former colleague of mine from Snake, Daniel Berman, who's also my co-organizer of DevOps Days Tel Aviv. And he's now a product marketing manager at Snake, but he was formerly a developer advocate at Logs.io. So there is some overlap there. But sometimes companies with deep tech, or at least that are powered by deep tech, their buying persona isn't technical. So AppsFlyer is a very good example of that, where their platform, which is a mobile attribution platform, which is basically mobile analytics, is targeted at a marketeer or a business persona. And this business persona will usually go and say, okay, we need to start, you know, measuring our mobile leads. And they will select AppsFlyer, but AppsFlyer is eventually an SDK that you need to embed in your code. And so the developer is the champion, or at least the consumer in a sense, of the actual product itself. When he's embedding it into his code, he needs to be able to believe in the engineering team standing behind it, needs to know that, the code is reliable, needs to be able to do it in self-serve and implement and have the right tools to succeed at doing so. So there are many companies that today, even if their buying persona is not a technologist, they need this type of role in their company. So one of the things that so if I were to differentiate between kind of the outcomes of developer marketing and developer relations, I would say that developer marketing is highly focused on leads and eventually translating that to revenue and business metrics. But Philip Kren, who is a developer advocate at Elastic, who recently spoke at Community Summit Tel Aviv, and who I highly appreciate, said this in his talk, and it really resonated with me. And there is some debate about this. I'll say that this isn't necessarily a consensus, but for me, it holds true because I don't think developer relations can be quantified and measured in as hard of metrics as, for example, developer marketing. So if you're measuring your success for your developer relations organization and leads, or you're a marketing organization, if you're measuring in revenue, you're a sales organization, developer relations is about growth and reach. And of course, while nothing in the company can be disconnected from the business, right? Obviously, at the end of the day, we're trying to drive a business. With developer relations and community and things that are a little bit more in this realm, the goals are much more long-term and focused kind of on the experience side. And when I say experience, I mean your users, developer, user experience, and their success. And there's a lot that comes under these two kind of less quantifiable kind of words, growth and reach. But it can also encompass things like expansion, depth of usage of your product, success at using your product or APIs, whatever it is that you need your technology users to succeed at. And these are business benefits, but it's hard to quantify them in really dry numbers like leads or revenue metrics. So that's a whole nother talk, but that's something that I do like to mention. So in the context of developer relations versus developer advocacy. So I think that, and I'll just close that up by saying that I think that developer relations is represented in different work than developer marketing and product marketing. And many times I like to call it, and this is like kind of a term from like the DevOps industry, but I like to call it goats in the pasture. So you kind of go out into the world, and you spread the gospel and you connect with your users and you provide them with the tools they need to succeed. Valuable knowledge sharing in various forums and channels, and you're there for them to provide answers so that they can have an excellent experience with your product. And when it's not a good experience, to make sure that you try to understand why and you try to help them, and that feedback is fed back into the organization and your product improves as a result. And developer relations is kind of mapping that all out. So you're going wide and understanding kind of the full set of your technology users, and be really consistent in providing focused and relevant content, if it's by platforms, the clouds and the tools and the integration, the technologies you integrate with, or by language, spoken, like whatever language that your audience, geographic language, for example, or even coding languages, the ecosystem that they're playing in, if it's partners and others, by their level of proficiency, and then it's building the relevant tools and channels to make sure that this is all supported. I like to say you need to cater to the diversity of personas, like from noobs through ninjas, across all of this diverse and very wide range of technologies, languages, etc. And you can also be data driven when it comes to developer relations. So understanding your user base and based on geography. So if you have a lot of users in APAC or specifically in China, to make sure that you do some geographic language, fitting your language to the audience and your tools and your documentation, and build the relevant engagement models based on what they use there. Like if it's in China, if it's Weibo, or I'm forgetting, WeChat, and things like that. It's really understanding who your communities are, what the most popular languages or platforms that your users are using. I mean, you can't do everything all at once. So if you have most of your users using AWS and Golang, you know, to cater to those first. And so then let's go on to developer advocacy, right? So there's also the term developer advocacy. So what's the difference between developer relations and developer advocacy? So developer advocacy to me, if developer relations goes wide, developer advocacy goes deep, and that means to become the domain expert on a specific topic. So it's very hard to be an expert in all of the things that I spoke about. Like when you say go wide, you can't have someone that's a domain expert in every programming language, with every cloud, with every integration, or with every integrated partner. And so many times you'll find developer advocates at companies, sometimes called evangelists as well, that are highly focused on specific technologies. So AWS has container experts, and they have programming language experts, and they have some for Java and some for Golang and some for JavaScript. And so becoming really an expert, and then also helping the developer relations team build out those tools. So if it's excellent documentation for those specific tools, platforms, languages, API references, walkthroughs, demos, be kind of the complementary side to developer relations and actually being the technology expert. And many times developer advocates are actually former engineers. They actually have to really be able to engineer these solutions. Sometimes when they see that, you know, a user is not succeeding with a certain something, to like create a kind of what I call black ops kind of patch, or write some kind of bridge or duct tape code, POC it, and then sometimes if it's successful, you can even put through into the roadmap and productize it. But really, it's really important. I think the most critical part is actually advocating back into the product feedback loop. So you take from these interactions, you learn from them, you continuously improve your developer and user experience. If you don't do that, you've kind of missed the most important part, I guess, of developer advocacy. And so why is this all important? Because eventually developer relations advocacy maps to the most critical piece in the funnel. It's the decision-making, where your users make the decision based on this understanding, this experience of whether they want to use your product in the long term, if it's maintained and well supported, if the team cares, if they can influence the roadmap, if the engineering is deep and skilled enough and worthy to be embedded in their code, their systems, their stacks. And if you do this all right, you can also create champions and advocates. And there's this team called orbit.love, and they actually, their job is what they're trying to build out is how to quantify kind of the success of community and developer relations and this kind of interaction. And their engagement is called love. So you can really generate that love based on this engagement and this interaction. So the person really feels attached to your product, and they actually want to pay it forward and, you know, provide the most valuable source of kind of marketing, which is kind of word of mouth and peer-to-peer marketing, championship, advocacy. And this kind of feeds back into the top of the funnel. Because many times technology consumers actually very much rely on their peers' input for adopting new technologies. Okay, so now how does this all tie into Meetups? So let's bring it all together and let's talk about Meetups for the win. So one channel that I have found to be incredibly effective is Meetups, for getting in front of technologists, for building meaningful relationships with technology users and developers. And I'll say that this is, of course, with the caveat that COVID has really changed the game for developer relations. You know, we really also had to start reinventing ourselves. There was a really big dependence on things like meetups and events and face-to-face events and face-to-face interaction. All this had to be kind of re-engineered and changed. I'm not saying it was all done successfully, but this really did throw us a curveball. But I can say that at least for us, and I don't know if that's helpful, but at least for us here in Tel Aviv, I'm in Tel Aviv. It looks like there's a good chance that we will be coming back to the world. I'm having my first hybrid in-person meetup on April 20th already. So crossing fingers that the world will be coming back, settling back into coming back to this world of meetups and events, etc. And why I like meetups is it's kind of your backdoor, low-key, informal community, and they pack a lot in. So let's unpack them. Okay, so meetups. Meetups to me are essentially like kind of a microcosm of the industry. And I wanted to actually share meetup.com because I had such a trouble sharing my screen. I don't know if I should actually try this or not. Should I? I don't know. I wanted to, give me a second. I'm not going to do that because it took me so long to share my screen. I'm just going to bypass it. But if you go to meetup.com and you're in a big city, yeah, I'll with a little disclaimer, if you're in a big city, I don't really know what it's like in rural areas, I'll be perfectly honest. But big cities in the United States, from San Francisco in the Bay Area to Austin to Philadelphia to Atlanta to Chicago to London to Berlin to Singapore and APAC and Sydney and Melbourne and Tel Aviv, you will find dozens of meetups on a diversity of tech topics. And I like to say that it's a microcosm because some are bigger and some are smaller, very much like in the real world. Like the JavaScript meetups will almost likely be much bigger than the Rust ones, and the AWS ones much bigger than the DigitalOcean ones. It's a very good representation of kind of the technology trends in the industry. And today, really, there's no doubt that a lot of products are adopted bottom up rather than top down. Developers have become decision makers, and it really does have a direct effect on business, being in front of these users and connecting to these users. So I found that meetups with what I call smallish effort, big impact. I mean, many times they're a lot lower key, a lot less formal. You can do a lot with a lot less effort. You can really create a lot of impact. You can meet people that are in the same space and learn from them. It's an area for peer-to-peer, arena for peer-to-peer problem solving. You can gain more perspective on common problems. You can gain visibility for your brand and awareness within target audiences. This is, you know, from the first bat, right? This is off the bat, like, and this is short term. And I can even tell you that at Cloudify, meetups for us affected a very substantial business decision that we made. Originally, when we wrote our product, we wrote it in Java and a proprietary Groovy-based DSL. And after going to a lot of DevOps meetups and getting involved in DevOps days and organizing the event and doing open spaces and learning from peers, the company decided to do a complete rewrite of the product in Python and YAML. And this changed our adoption significantly. So you really can get that kind of perspective from the industry and learn what's being used, how technologies are being used. I also think that if you are a conference organizer, I'm not sure anybody in the room is, but if you are, meetups can augment your community. I like to say that communities are not just one day a year, and I'll explain exactly what that means. You can leverage and reuse existing assets. So if you spoke at a major event, Meetup is a good opportunity to kind of even do a roadshow with that and go to a bunch of different communities and get more exposure for something that you already invested time in. And hosting is very low effort. I mean, you can buy some pizzas and beers and bring like-minded individuals right into your office, right into your backyard. So I think that's to begin with, like what's in it for your organization. Excuse me. But in the long term, it's even more than that. The speed of innovation and technology is constantly moving. It's at a really rapid pace. And communities can kind of supercharge that. You know, you can learn exactly where the industry is moving in the long term, build your product strategy based on that. Like I said, the Cloudify stories, this was something that, you know, where we're constantly benchmarking ourselves and checking ourselves as we go along that, okay, yeah, Python is still, you know, the language to be in the open source world, and so is YAML, and understanding that kind of in the long term. Also be on top of emerging trends, right? So if you're not using a certain technology, or you should be using a certain technology, and this also influences your ability to hire excellent talent. Engineers like to be working with the most cutting edge stacks and technologies. They don't want to be left behind either. So really being able to benchmark yourself versus the industry. You can understand how advanced your technology is. You can meet partners and alliances and build really long-term relationships. So I think that in the short term, it has immediate impact with a pretty small effort. And in the long term, you can really execute on important strategic goals through meetups. But at the end of the day, we are also people, right? So hang on. And we're not just companies. So meetups are also good for us on a personal level, right? Sometimes we're looking to actually change our focus or even change our professional, our professional area, our professional expertise. So this is a quick way to get access to expertise and learn new things. It can help you with challenges that you're focused on right now. If you're working on something and you're not necessarily sure how to solve it, meet people that are in this specific area that are experts that can help you maybe work through existing professional issues. It's a good place that, say, you move to a new city to find like-minded individuals, peers, to actually build a network. If you're suffering from imposter syndrome, you can gain confidence in your skill set and understand how you can also benchmark yourself on a personal level and understand, kind of map the gaps if you want to learn a new skill or if you to discover a new skill that you should have. This is a good place also to learn that, to know that that's the situation, and also be able to gain that expertise. So, and sometimes it's not only just about meeting peers and like-minded individuals and building a network, but also sometimes we do want to meet influencers. We do want to meet people that are good for us to have in our network. And sometimes influencers from our specific industry are speaking at local meetups because they're in town for a big conference and industry event, and they're just around. In any case, they do a smaller, less formal meetup in the evening. This happens often. So it's many times you can also get in front of influencers and be in front of the right people as well. And then in the long term, I would say that from a personal perspective, individual perspective, you can actually deepen and enrich your skill set, right? So like I said, you can identify the things that you want to learn, but you can also find the places that that actually can teach you that. So the meetups that are deeper and more advanced. You can stay on top of trends in your industry. Professional networking and employability. I can say for myself that since leading meetups and communities, I don't apply for jobs anymore. I really just talk to my network, and I'm very quickly connected to relevant opportunities. You could also figure out what are the things that you like in your industry and what are things that you less like and like less, and then focus on those specifically. And you can also yourself become an influencer. It's a very easy, I wouldn't say easy, but it's like almost like a gradual and like, it's a low barrier to entry to actually do a talk. It's usually, sometimes they're smaller audiences, and it's a lot less intimidating than starting big at a large industry event or a big conference. And you can slowly build up your persona and work up to becoming an influencer yourself, if that's something that you want to do for your professional career. So I think meetups have a lot of value, both for an organization and for an individual, and being able to participate meaningfully in communities and actually connect to peers and share your expertise and learn. Again, like I said, both as an organization and then as an individual, there are things that are very, very similar in that respect. And I'll just quickly kind of give my own kind of lessons from the Tel Aviv community that I've been leading for more than 7 years now. So DevOps Tel Aviv has been around for at least 7 years, and that's why it's even 4,500 plus members. Statscraft is very laser focused on monitoring, so 400 plus monitoring and observability professionals, specifically cloud native and open source. We recently kickstarted a DevRel community because it is a growing area, and production jungle, which is very closely related to production SRE DevOps. And these helped me grow immensely. I met some of the most strongest and important people in the Israeli ecosystem. And what I like a lot about community, for me at least, something that makes it very meaningful, because driving a community is a lot of work. It's chop wood and carry water. You constantly have to be driving momentum. And for me, it enables me to be a giver before I'm a taker. So I can say to people that I want to meet, or at least people that I want to get in front of, or people that I want to connect to, I have an opportunity for you to speak at my event, and then we can build a relationship around that. And I'll just give a kind of backstory as to where the Tel Aviv community actually came from, which you can find at tlvcommunity.dev. So all of these events are like all these groups are kind of slightly related. They touch on a larger kind of area of DevOps as a whole. So some of these are subsets of that. And we brought the TLV community together because of COVID, because we didn't want our own communities competing with each other in a sense. So 2020 was very strange, right? So we had the first couple of months, which were regular, and then suddenly COVID fell upon all of us. And it started off strong. Virtual events at first, people were like, okay, that's the next big thing. We're all going to virtual events now. It'll replace everything, and it's all the hype. And really at the beginning of the year, they exploded. Like I can even give the example of all the talks that was led by Patrick Dubois and Sam Hepburn from Sneak. And they had thousands of attendees at that event. And DevSecCon 24 that I led in June that year also had thousands of participants. But then slowly kind of the hype and the excitement kind of started to die down, and people were like, okay, been there, done that. And how does this really differ from every other Zoom I've been in all day? They don't want to sit in front of a computer anymore. They're like, okay, what value is this giving me? Like being there immediately and right now, I can just watch the videos later. And so then these slowly started dying down, and there was this huge explosion of events. And at first, at the beginning of the year with COVID, we decided that we weren't actually going to hold any Tel Aviv community events because I was overly optimistic, and I thought that COVID would be behind us within a couple months. And then towards like kind of the middle of the year, when I saw that it was clear that there wasn't going to be an end in sight. And then I had to make the decision of, do I want a complete disconnect from the community for 2 years, or do we want to do something? Some kind of something to bring at least everyone together under kind of an umbrella. And so that's what we decided to do. And so I think just in terms of metrics and to be kind of realistic about what you can achieve with virtual events, I can tell you that we had thousands more registrants than we had at any other event. But eventually in real time, we had a little bit more than 100 live attendees. And I think that's not terrible. I think we had like more than 1,000 registrants, excuse me. We didn't have a couple thousand, still only a Tel Aviv community, but we had more than 1,000 registrants. We had about 10% turnout. Although a lot of people said, oh, okay, well, I can't attend live. I'm waiting just to get the email for the videos and such. And I've actually been to pretty big industry events, and they've had similar numbers. And I think at the end, towards the end of the year, people were kind of getting a little bit tired. But I see now that, the kind of the meetup format, like this format, is working probably a little bit better because you don't have to commit a whole day or a whole big chunk of time, and you can get significant value in pretty short talks. I found that the shorter, smaller virtual events do actually work a little bit better even for us. And after Community Summit, we decided to hold off, and we only held one other quarterly community event, and that was in March, and that was all virtual as well. Now in April, after kind of Tel Aviv and Israel has started to get vaccinated, we're going to try our first hybrid event. So I can report back to Ellen on that, but it's been a really crazy year. And I think that looking forward, what we're probably going to see is at least more virtual events from areas that are still not ready to come back to any kind of other format. And this is probably going to be the new normal for a while. And some hybrid events in areas that it is possible, probably smaller. I even now, I'm not sure what I'm doing with this event this year. We're considering doing a smaller scale in-person Tel Aviv event, community summit Tel Aviv. That's going to be maybe a 300, 400 person event. We're just not sure yet. I sent out what I call a viability survey, and I got some feedback, and some folks say they will attend, some say they won't. So we'll have to stay tuned. But I can say that the event will probably be less formal and less, high end, because I guess we might not have as much time to put it together, but I think that actually is fine. And I think that these grassroots events are not expected to be, trade show level. But so that's my take on the Tel Aviv community. I think one thing though that's really important, is always important in the context of community, is a strong focus on content. Like say content is queen. The amount of content is growing exponentially year over year, and this was exacerbated by COVID for sure. Nearly every company is hosting a podcast or has a blog or putting out ebooks, digital media guides, infographics, and you can even see, while this isn't exactly about tech content, but this is a snapshot from the many podcasts on Dev2. Even Nielsen has noted a very, very high spike in digital media consumption. But the critical part in content when it comes to developer communities is consistently delivering good and valuable content. So I have a really good friend who's a production engineer who coined this phrase at his Kafka Summit talk: trust is consistency over time. And he was talking about this in the context of being an engineering manager and working effectively with other engineering teams. But I think it perfectly encapsulates basically any interaction with technology consumers, with developers, from your product and your product experience through the community experience. Value is derived from delivering consistently good content over time. I would say it's much better to have a less intense cadence, to even go quarterly or less than that if you want to start building content, if you want to start doing anything that's developer focused, if it's a blog or if it's a podcast or if it's a meetup, to make sure that you have really strong, consistently good content, even if it has to be at a wider cadence. Like if you have to widen it out and make sure that it's you have more time between events. It's not about having a lot. Volume is not the key here. Quality is the key. And that's because, the greatest commodity today is people's time. And people don't want to feel like their time is being wasted if they went to something that's not good enough or wasn't worth their time. And in the DevOps community, they have this term that they use, the law of mobility, right? And that's in the context of something that they call open spaces, which is an opportunity for you to like kind of share with your peers and learn from your peers about a specific topic. And the idea is you can move from group to group and learn based on your interest in the topic. And so this is true across the board. People will come in and out of your community. Obviously there's always movement, but based on the quality, right? They'll leave, the law of mobility. They will leave your community if you're not consistently providing good content. So that's something that you don't want to happen. You want people to want to come back, to be excited to be a part of your community, to feel like they're constantly growing and learning and deriving value from your community. So this is something that you should really, really make a point of. This includes also being very clear, about sponsored content as well. So communities need to be supported to thrive. We appreciate our sponsors. They're very, very important in enabling the community to actually exist. But at the same time, people don't want to come to your event to see a product pitch. So I would say that trust is actually, in this sense, it's encapsulated in being very clear. You can say, what is a sponsored track, or what is sponsored content, or what part is sponsor driven in your agenda, but make sure that's really, really well labeled, because otherwise people will lose trust in your event, your content, your meetup, your blog, whatever it is. So just be very, very clear on that so that people can make the choice if they do want to be in a product pitch or not. Okay, and so at the end of the day, we do want to be able to measure our success. We do want to have some kind of tangible way of understanding if we're being successful at a certain venture. So I would say, while I said that there aren't hard leads or revenue metrics, or at least maybe there are, but it's not as direct a line. I think that there are certain things that you can take into account when you're trying to build out such a strategy, realistic KPIs. So I would say increased adoption and product usage, depth of product usage. Amir Shavat, who's a good friend of mine, who used to be the developer relations at Slack, used to say that one of the things that they were measured on was kind of the expansion of usage of APIs, the deepening of usage, and integrations with the product. So those are things that you can certainly measure. Increased awareness to your product. Doors open more easily if people trust your engineers more readily, if they want to hear more from you, if their name rolls off your tongue, if you go into the room like, oh yeah, we've heard of your product. That's something that's a huge business benefit. Sometimes you have to do a lot more work so people even open the door, so they even know who you are. Increased engagement and improved user experience, so people being continuously engaged with your product and helping you also improve your user experience, but also them deriving an improved user experience. So getting feedback that your product is working better, or that they're having a better experience. And this can be measured in volume. So like the number of interactions, the growth of your community, the amount of threads or conversations that are being opened, the emails that you're receiving, the discussions, contributions, if it's an open source project, active membership, if you're running a community, the numbers to see that the numbers there are growing. And long-term engagement and mindshare over time. Maintaining developer mindshare is not an easy thing. Maintaining excitement around a developer product. I mean, this is a world that constantly changes. When I'm leading the DevOps community, many times when we're evaluating the content for our events, it's all about the system, the psychology, the processes, the culture, because the tooling changes. Tooling is always changing. So being able to maintain that mind share over an extended period of time, it's no small thing. It's a really tough nut to crack. So I think that kind of long-term engagement is something that should be considered a value and something that you need to strive for. I think that's it. That's it for me. Thank you very much. I hope this was useful. I hope this helped you kind of think about the world of developer relations, advocacy, community, meetups in the context of all that, and how it can, provide tangible value for you as you start your journey.
Thank you so much for joining us. I do have a couple tactical questions that people sent to me that I would love to ask, but if people in the audience have questions, you can also use the Q&A, or I think you can raise your hands. And if you raise your hands, I'm also happy to unmute so you can ask directly. But one that I think comes up within the portfolio a lot that multiple people have asked me about is they'll go to Meetup and they'll find the local Meetup, and people aren't necessarily sure the best way to reach out to organizers. Like no one wants to just be like, hey, can I come promote my thing right away? And you really want to be building that relationship without it seeming transactional. How do you like to be approached when people are interested in your communities?
So that's a great question. So first and foremost, even when I myself in my job and when I'm working with my clients, I try to keep it real and personal. So like oftentimes you'll get like these pitches from these PR agencies that you can tell are like canned and they're not customized, or they're not necessarily relevant to your community at all. They don't like actually take the time to think it through. So I think that personal, real messages are great. Sometimes folks reach out to me and they say to me, I'm not quite sure how to do this, right? This is my first time trying to pitch a meetup. How exactly does it work? What's the format? What to expect? First, ask some questions. Find out exactly how like the meetup accepts talks, how the meetup accepts topics. If there's an opportunity, for example, if you do just want to sponsor and not necessarily have a talk or things like that, just ask questions and find out exactly how it works. And also make sure that their content is relevant and that it's a personal kind of kind of message like, hi, Sharone, like I've been checking out some of the previous events. I think that this talk that I have could be relevant. I didn't see a topic related to this spoken about in the last X months, weeks, whatever. So yeah, I think you need to do your homework. Don't just like kind of pitch like the same topic across the board in some kind of a canned format. Then it's just, and that's true for everything. If it's HR, if it's other things, like all those messages you receive on LinkedIn that aren't necessarily relevant for you, right? So just keep it relevant.
That makes sense. And then I guess when people are thinking through, should they start their own meetup? Should they participate in others? How do you think about the sequencing there as you're building out your community?
Okay, that's a great question. And I would say that for me, the advice I usually give across the board is there's likely a meetup that exists on this topic. See how you can plug into an existing community, because building a community from the ground up is a lot of work. We're 7 years into DevOps Israel. It took us 7 years to get to 4,500 members. And we feel like that's a great success, right? We're at about 1.5 years with the DevRel community. It is a more niche audience, and we're at 300 plus. And continuously, like I said, continuously driving that momentum and the quality. It's a lot of work. It's heavy lifting. So unless you're sure that you can do a really good job of driving a meetup all of the time, consistently providing good content, tapping into the right speakers, getting the sponsors on board, all of these things, it's almost like a second job. When I was doing it and volunteering, when I had a day job, it was extremely overwhelming. Like I wanted to continue driving, and there were periods where we didn't do a very good job, and it was dry, and it was embarrassing, and because it's something that you constantly need to cultivate. So I would say that if you have the opportunity and you have good communities in your area that you can tap into, do that first, unless there's like a major gap and it's a completely new topic and nobody's even heard of it and you're kickstarting it, or it's specific to you and your company or your product. I would say tap into other meetups before you kickstart your own, because it is a lot more work than it probably appears to be.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And then one more that I got in advance is when you're thinking about that, and I know you said it's great if you can write a conference talk and then reuse it. Do you have any advice you give people on how to toe the line between wanting to work in something their company is working on and kind of do that support of the company mission while not having the talk feel like an advertisement?
So there's no, look, it's complicated. So it depends on like, obviously what it is. You'll oftentimes find that there are AWS workshops or HashiStack workshops or things like that at like developer events, right? If it's specific to a certain technology and it's relevant to the conference and people, it's a highly adopted technology, it could be relevant, right, for your product or whatever it is. But many times what I say is it should probably be a tech talk, and you can probably demo the functionality through your product. Say, okay, this is how it works in the modern container orchestration tool, and it's your modern container orchestration tool, whatever it is. But it needs to provide some kind of tangible value to the audience, and maybe you can demonstrate it through using your product. This is how we do it with Snyk. This is how you would scan the code with Snyk. But know that other tools like XYZ exist in the ecosystem as well, and you can try those out too. There are some open source tools, there are some free tools. There, you know what I mean? And kind of give them an understanding of what else exists. That's fine. But just to sit there and tick off a list of the benefits of your product, probably not going to have as much of an effect.
I don't think I would like to go to that talk, which is why I'm always thinking about that problem. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions coming in right now, so I'll give people one last minute if they have any questions they want to get in, or otherwise I will let Sharone get back to her day. And thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be back next week. We'll be talking with Kyle Parrish, who is the head of sales at Figma. So if you have gotten a good start on your community and you're looking to move that forward into a sales organization, that's what we'll be talking about. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It was great. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
See everyone later.
Bye. Thanks.